No, that's why you and Lynn are there, to remind me. How's that? Is that recording?
Good, you're on. Yep.
Okay. So welcome all to Adjuvant Protocols for Healing, an hour and a half devoted to my new book, which many or all of you have, and a work of that encapsulates almost 50 years of my clinical experience and life's work as a teacher and a healer. So today we're joined by the Colorado Springs standard process grouping that used to meet every month and now meets quarterly. And they were, with Lynn's guidance and help, have requested that I do a series on going through all of the endocrine glands. So today we're going to look at the thymus gland, which is the fourth in the makeup of the endocrine system. As you can see here, let me see if I can expand that for you. And there's a couple things I want to say about that. We realize that we have the three upper endocrine glands, the pineal, the pituitary, and the thyroid. The largest endocrine gland, by the way, being the thyroid. It's I guess you could debate if the pancreas is bigger, but that's what medically they say, that the thyroid is the largest. To the fourth. So in order, not just physiologically, not just biochemically, but energy-wise, the three upper have to cross over. The intelligence working at those three upper endocrine glands. Now remember, the endocrine system, which I'll read you a little bit from Dr. Lee on it, is the information network for the whole human body. The body cannot communicate unless the whole endocrine system is in harmony. And there's disorder in the body if one part of that endocrine system is not working. And we're going to look at that today related to the thymus. And so, but all of that information must pass through the thymus gland to bless and to give the other three, the lower three, what they need physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. So I'm not going to go into the esoteric part. I am going to touch on that a little bit. So remember, these are all ductless glands. And let me just mute everyone out. So they have the ability to secrete hormone, and the thymus secretes a hormone directly into the bloodstream. No other organ can do that. They have to go through the digestive system or through another system of the body. So that's what's unique about them. Now some of you may ask or even argue that why isn't the hypothalamus gland in there? Because it is not a ductless gland. So the hypothalamus is an endocrine gland. It's a neuroendocrine gland, but it is considered part of the brain. It is not an independent gland like the 7 primary are. So I know I read this when I've taught these sessions, but I want to read it again because this is from the master. This is from Dr. Lee, quoted in a newspaper in Herald of Health, which was a Milwaukee newspaper in 1959. It must be remembered that the metabolism of the human body, being an animal function, is a breaking down process of complex compounds that are built up by the systemic processes of plant metabolism. We must eat the earth, or we must eat what walks on the earth. We cannot eat the sun, which is the source of all nutrients for this planet. We can't take the sun into our bodies and expect to stay alive. We have to use how the sun blesses other parts of the vegetable and animal kingdom and bring that into our bodies. The animal or human body cannot build up organic compounds and is wholly dependent upon the vegetable kingdom for organic foods. You can't be a breatharian and expect to live. And teachers from Buddha to Jesus and others, you know, found that out, that even though prayer and fasting is good, they say that Buddha lived on a grain of rice a day for a long time, but he almost killed himself. Not wise. We must, and it's fine to do that, to go into that wilderness period, to have advanced consciousness, to have visions, of course. But we have to eat what grows and walks on this earth. Vitamins are a class of organic compounds, probably the most complex of food constituents. All the ductless glands, thyroid, parathyroid, part of the thyroid endocrine gland, thymus, pineal, pituitary, gonads, pancreas, the Isles of Langerhans, which I'll teach you all in a few months. That will be my next. By the way, the endocrine part of the pancreas, in the pancreas, those endocrines are little islands or islets, they say, of Langerhans, who discovered those. There's 1 million approximately in that one organ. The body is miraculous. Now, Lee considers the spleen as an endocrine gland. It's not a ductless gland, but it is. So is the heart, which I've talked to you about in past lectures. And we're going to talk about the spleen a little bit today as well. Let me just mute everybody out here. So all of these ductless glands must have one or more of the 3 classes of vitamins. So how the reporter that wrote this article and took Lee's words interpreted this was 3 classes of vitamins. But what should have been said is the 3 parts of the nutritional spectrum for these ductless glands, which is true of every organ, gland, and tissue in the body. You must have the vitamin specific to that, the mineral specific to that gland, and the like protein, which we call the protomorphogen, in order to secrete their vital fluids. And if deprived of the vitamins, any 3 classes of these will atrophy and cease to function. The thymus gland, along with the pineal, is the most misunderstood. I was looking for the right word. Misunderstood gland substance in the human body. The pineal is really the most misunderstood, but the thymus is right there. But without this gland, we cannot live. We literally cannot live. And I'll show you as we get through here what they thought it was, what they were confused about, and now what they understand. So that Dr. John Diamond was a medical doctor in upstate New York, I think Salem, New York. I met him several times. Is a great, big standard process account and a very knowledgeable man, and wonderful to have someone in the medical profession to understand not only nutrition and how it works, but understand Dr. Lee, but she had a great understanding of Dr. Lee. Interestingly enough, this is from Dr. Diamond, the word thymus is derived from the Greek word thymos, which is untranslatable into modern terms, but denoted life force, soul, the feeling of sensibility. Now, this is why I said when I began today that the energy, the information, the life force from those three upper glands must go through this gland to bless and help and nurture the entire rest of the body, but specifically the lower three endocrine glands. As Onanians points out, thymos originally referred to breath. It was the stuff of consciousness, the spirit, the breath, soul, upon which depended a man's, woman's energy and courage. Even the earliest origins of the world implied rising into flames as a cloud, spirit, which relates to the concept of soul and life energy. As one point in the Iliad, Achilles says, waking like smoke in the breasts of men, even as Agamemnon, which I think was his enemy, angered me, but we will let bygones be bygones, quieting the thymos of our breasts, so they didn't kill each other. Thus, thymos was metaphorically a rising of smoke in the breast, as its Indo-European roots imply. Oh, hasn't downloaded yet? Well, not quite sure what's going on there. Let me just jump out of here for 1 second. Let me go back and let me just load it again. Oh, there it goes. Okay. And so, not sure why that happened. Internet. So one can see that all throughout history, there was a recognition of the energetic, of the spiritual significance of this gland related to not only that the fact that it existed, but the significant part it played in quieting the life force within people. So that's probably the best way to put it. The thymus gland lies just beneath the upper part of the breastbone in the middle of the chest. It is present in all mammals and is called the sweetbreads in calves. I have an article on sweetbreads. Until the 1950s, little was understood about the thymus. Well, I just read you something back from Greek mythology. So the arrogant scientific mind, again, unless they know about it, unless they can figure it out, it doesn't exist, but it did exist. Although there has been clues to its function for many years, as far back as 1902. Well, listen, dude, whoever wrote this, it goes way back from there. Fullerton, a London physician, was using thymus extracts in the treatment of cancer in 1902. And I'm going to show you that at the very end, MD Anderson in this country now has done studies on thymus extract for cancer and other things. But they don't give it to people. They're studying it, they know it works, but they don't give it to them. It's not part of the treatment care. However, the standard teaching was that the thymus gland had no function at all in the adult. Wrong. Wrong. We'll see this. We'll see this. A delusion fostered by the fact that during autopsy, the thymus was usually found to be quite small and atrophied. Listen, upon autopsy, the meridians don't exist either. When the life force has left the body, yes, this very significant gland that is so needed in the governance of emotion, of what they call the breath, the regulation of the soul within the body, not to mention physiologically what it does. Of course it disappears when they start looking at just the physical form, because the being must be in the body for it to be working. It is part of that eternal self. Now, it's the physical form, a tab of that, but it is part of it. This is because the thymus gland, in response to acute stress, this is what they think, such as an infection, can shrivel to half its size in 24 hours. Well, of course, there's nobody there. It's no longer needed, just like they can't find the meridians on autopsy, as I say. No wonder it was in a state of atrophy when examined post-mortem. Oh, that was John Diamond again. I love that guy. The fact that the size of the thymus is generalized from autopsy observations leads to a tragic misdiagnosis. Yes. Yes. It's a tragedy that they don't really understand this. Dr. Lee understood it. I'm going to read you what he said about it. Of illness in children in the 1920s to the 40s. It was known from routine autopsies that children have target thymuses that have larger, thymuses than adults. However, when children who died suddenly, as in crib death, sudden crib death, were found at post-mortem examination to have particularly large thymus glands. So we're going to get into this, what was thought, what was misinterpreted. They were thought to have died of a thymus-related disease, a disease given the name of status whatever it is. Research on the thymus gland in the 50s, along with further evidence from post-mortem examinations, brought this disease into question. Pathologists took note of the fact that autopsies performed from those who died on the battlefield were similar to those men of the same age who died from chronic illnesses in a hospital. Eventually, it was realized that the thymus shrinks rapidly during serious illness, death, or a great physical stress. So it's dynamic. It's just not one size. It expands, contracts. The children's gland had time to shrink. Their large thymuses were actually the normal size. A whole disease had been constructed on this erroneous idea that the thymus gland had swollen and caused death. To think that children's thymus glands had frequently been irradiated to make them smaller on the assumption that this would reduce the chance of illness. It was just the opposite. When the gland was removed or irradiated, the children, the animals that they did this on, which I'll show you, the animals died. Children died. What it did was destroy a vital part of their immune system and make them susceptible to infections, cancer, and chronic diseases. The thymus gland is the bridge between the endocrine system, all of the information to bring balance, and the immune system. Without good thymic health and activity, you can't have a strong immune system. It, of course, as I say, medically over the years, they denied it. They had all these weird ideas about it. They nuked it. They removed it. The thymus gland is a ductless gland in the chest, distinct by the gut sweetbread or pancreas. So I'll go into that because cultures ate those all down through the centuries. There was a reason why they did that. Pyramid-shaped lymphoid organ. Now, I just want to give you a little bit because I'm a great studier. I have been over my youth of Buckminster Fuller, who created the geodesic domes. I helped build the geodesic dome here in Colorado. The pyramid is, of course, geodesic domes are made up of several sequences of pyramids, shaped triangles, is the most stable structure. If you apply force on any part of that triangle or joint, the net force is distributed equally all over the structure. All sides experience the force at once. Boy, does that describe the thymus gland. When you activate, when the thymus gland is nurtured through nutrition, through rest, through energetic work, whatever you're doing with it, it equally impacts in a good way everything else, the whole body. So I'm not going to read all of this. You know, oftentimes I give these quotes to you. I just like to use them as trigger points or starting points for me to have discussion with you. The functions of the thymus were not well understood until the early 1960s by medical science, when its role in the development of the body's system of immunity was discovered. And that's why I say the thymus is the key. It's the bridge. It's the means by which your immune system can communicate with your endocrine system, so that all the information from the endocrine system goes through the thymus, particularly related to other things, but particularly related to the immune system. Do you think there's a miscommunication right now going on in the immunity of the peoples of the world right now? Do you think the peoples of the world need thymus extract right now? Beginning during fetal development, the thymus processes many of the body's lymphocytes, which migrate throughout the body via the bloodstream, seeding lymph nodes and other lymphatic tissue. Well, what do the lymph nodes do? If the thymus hormones are seeding these lymph nodes, the lymph nodes are taking what does not serve, what does not belong in the bloodstream, and i.e. the tissues, and it strengthens them. And here is the key to the thymus of helping the lymphatic system. I have said, and others, that the thymus is the brain of the lymphatic system. Now remember, we have twice as many lymph nodes, lymph cells in the body as blood cells, twice as many, 2 to 1. Nature was so abundant, so intelligent, that it said, look, I have all these blood cells which nourish everything, but I want to protect them, doubly protect them. There it is. Twice as many lymph nodes as blood cells, as lymph cells as blood cells. The main cells undergoing this process are the T cells, groups of cells essentially in protecting the body against invasion by foreign organisms. If the thymus fails to develop or is removed from early in fetal life, the immune system cannot develop completely. Normally, by the time an infant is a few months old, the immune system has sufficiently formed as to function throughout life. Yes. And of course, not that I want to get into vaccines or vaccinations. A child's body cannot even process vaccines and vaccinations until they're off of the mother's breast milk. Their immune system doesn't even know what to do with those substances. It's not ready. It hasn't developed. That's why feeding children, and I'll get into this when I give you my lecture on children's health, which will be many. That's why you can't give a young baby human food. Their immune system has no idea how to handle that, nor their digestive system. And eating is an immunological event. So when things are imposed, vaccines, however you feel about them, I don't want to get into it politically, but I will tell you that when you over-vaccinate a child too soon, you cut off, you really cut off and or stress the thymus gland, which affects that person for the rest of their life. Listen, sufficiently formed as to function throughout life. Okay, you want to get a good start on that? Make sure the mother, and this is why my product for pre and postnatal is Immuplex, Thymus PMG, Thymus cytosol, spleen PMG, spleen cytosol, which is the left and right hand, and you'll see in a minute. However, further growth and development of lymphoid tissue still depends on intervention of the thymic cells. After the initial seeding process, the thymus releases a hormonal substance that stimulates further growth of lymphoidal tissue, such as a substance has not been isolated. See, they still don't even know what's going on with this, but they know there's a substance. Yeah, you better believe there is. It's called divine intelligence that affects everything. So for thousands of years, people have eaten the organs of animals, but in particular, now most tribes ate the brain, the eyes, the tongue, everything, the intestine, but particularly, which has become a gourmet. If you go to, there was a great restaurant in Salt Lake City, Utah. If Mary Stockwell's on, Jack and Mary took me there every time I visited them. That was the highlight. Of course, being with Jack and Mary was the highlight of my trip, but that was the highlight of my trip, going there, because they had sweetbreads, and boy, were they good. I mean,
I'm here, Joseph. They sure were good.
We almost didn't even eat anything else. We had, yeah. I think we had 3 appetizers of sweetbreads, and we were almost full.
They had steak tartare there. You always got.
That's right. Yeah. Sweetbreads have been a very misleading name. They are neither sweet nor bread. It is thought by historians that they are called sweet because they taste richer and sweeter compared to typical gamey type taste and typical meat. And they are bread because the Old English word for flesh is bread, B-R-A-E-D, bread, yeah. Sweetbreads are the thymus or the pancreas glands of animals. Now, if you're going to eat the pancreas sweetbreads, they are more gamey, but they're still not bad. They're very pleasant. These are the 2 kinds of sweetbreads. Also, as heart or belly sweetbreads, which are an animal's pancreas. The throat is the thymus. So these glands are classified as awful, and that I had an explanation of that word. Oh, awful means relates to internal organs, not awful as they taste terrible or they're terrible for you. That's an old term related to the inside organs of animals. In culinary circles, meaning literally off fall or off cuts from the carcass. Many call them items of variety meats. Up until the time that Americans started enjoying the luxury of supermarkets, the mid-1940s, people would butcher their cattle on consumption. As times were hard and money was scarce. Listen, growing up, my parents went to the butcher shop and we ate heart, tongue, liver, tripe. Not that we liked it. Our dog got most of it if we could somehow get it to the dog before and fake that it was going into our mouth. But that's because people didn't have money. Nothing was wasted. Yes. Honor the whole animal. Honor all of the earth. That is the blessing of taking the earth into our body. This included all parts of the animal butchered. Everything was used and eaten by the family. Nowadays, these foods are considered a delicacy by people who enjoy them and are familiar with the cuisine. What did I want to read here? Oh, this gets into, so some of the T lymphocytes have the capacity to lyse the foreign tissues. So the word lyse means cause, okay? Lyse the foreign tissue cells, while others, to push them, in other words, while others are involved in recognizing the foreignness. So these T lymphocytes that the thymus gives off actually are very intelligent. They can push the immune system to work in times of infection or other problems, and they can recognize antigens, foreign substances, and help the body, of course, to create antibodies, which they talk about in the next sentence, and assisting a second subpopulation of bone marrow. See, these hormones from the thymus stimulate secretions from bone marrow into the bloodstream. These two types of immunocompetent T cells are called killer cells and helper cells, respectively. They are involved in both the tissue transplantation and hormonal antibody responses. On the other hand, the vast majority of thymic lymphocytes are immunologically incompetent. Some thymocytes are thought to give rise to the smaller pool of immunocompetent T cells by many, but many immigrate into the circulating blood. And then here are the killer T cells. Kurt Hamilton, a doctor in Texas, I used some of his. Thank you for sharing these. And you can see these T lymphocytes going in and literally destroying the cancer cell. Remember, when I gave my talk on cancer, do you remember? These are fungal protein tubules. This is how the rogue cell, known as a cancer cell, or any rogue cell, how they corrupt the other and colonize the other normal cells. They reach out. Guess what else does that? Viruses. You've seen so many pictures of the coronavirus, right? And it has these extensions with looks like little suction cups on the beginning. That's how they attach. That's what the vaccination, by the way, that they're going to put out. What the vaccination doesn't create an immune response. It gets rid of, it dissolves or breaks down these attachments, these fungal protein tubules. And this principle is throughout the body. It's the same principle of cancer spread, of virus spread, in particular, not so much bacterial spread. Isn't that interesting though? But look how these T cells, look at them. They're literally devouring that that cancer cell. Yes. And this is why during my journey, how many Thymex did I take a day, every day, never miss for 2 years? 24, 8, 3 times a day. Is this why I lived? Well, one of the reasons, because I constantly had working in my defense, these killer T cells. I would not have lived more than likely without it. So this is more information from Kurt. You can read this through. But remember, the thymosin, the hormone, is one of the hormones that help these T lymphocytes develop. Remember, before you get any type of immune response and the structures of that, the T cells, the B cells, you must have the hormone. You must have the information going to the body that says, hey, make these little guys, make the B cells. Okay, will do. Without that hormone, without that gland. And that's why when they nuked the gland or took it out, the dogs and the children died. To build T and B lymphocyte formation. Now remember, the T lymphocyte is thymus, the B is spleen. So I had a B cell cancer, so I took a lot of the T to get rid of these aberrant cells, rogue cells. But I also took a lot of spleen too, a lot. I still today, if you look at my desk right now, I have a bottle of spleen PMG and a bottle of thymus PMG right here. I never miss a day. I miss a lot of things with my nutrition. Some days I go every other day in my herbs. There are certain things I never miss. I never miss my enzymes, and I never miss thymus PMG. I'll talk about the difference between the thymus PMG and the Thymax in a little bit. Never miss. If I want to stay on this planet. Because I know, I understand. So over the years, I've written things a little, and some of you, especially the Colorado Springs group, you know, they really, and others, all of you too, love and enjoy me talking more esoterically. But so these are some things I wrote down a few years ago. And the thymus gland, as I said, it is the link between the endocrine gland, that information, the production of hormones, and the working. The immune system cannot work unless it gets the message. The hormonal message cannot work. Repairs damaged cells, will reuse, recycle old healthy components. It's a very economical system. The body knows how to do this. Now, you would say, oh, I remember, Joe, you talked about the spleen doing this, recycles blood cells. The thymus helps to rebuild any old cell in the body. According to wherever I research, I didn't give the research on that. The medium of keeping wounded material in solution so it can be handled immediately, so as not to be lodged into deeper levels of organs, glands, and tissues. Yes. The T cells identify it. Remember we talked, I just read you that. And the B cells wrap it. They engulf it. The monocytes particularly, that go from the bone marrow in an immature state into the spleen. Those B cell, which one of the types is monocytes, if someone has a heart attack, where is all of that cellular debris going to go? That's a lot of damage. How about a brain trauma? The thymus gland wakes the spleen up, says, hey, get your guys up. Let's get going. Get them out here. Get them dressed. Get them armed. Get them capable. Then they go out. The T cells identify it. The B cells wrap it, get it out through the lymphatic system, which again, the thymus helps to seed those lymphatic elements throughout our body. Here is the autoimmune factor, unresolved emotions. Remember, the Greeks talked a lot about if you're angry, you want to kill somebody. Common feeling right now. Or, you know, emotions build up. This is why when people get upset, when people have a loss in their life, it not only affects their heart, and I'll show you if I end up having enough time, how the thymus protects the heart. It is the protector of the heart, the emotional realm. Broken or damaged heart, here it is. Shock-related trauma, someone who is traumatized physically, mentally, emotionally. You've got to give them thymus. Now, when you talk about this, this is not Thymex. This is why this is where you need the protomorphogen. You need the self-regulating factor. Remember, what did Achilles say? I'm going to calm my chest down, right? Let the smoke burn off from the fire, calm it down. The Thymex is not going to do that. The Thymex is going to stimulate action. The Thymus PMG is going to regulate, self-regulation. Too high, calm down. Too low, for a child at these children's clinics when they're nuking them with all kinds of chemotherapy, their thymus is about pretty much stopped working. These are the children that need the Thymus PMG. Bedwetting in children, where, and I will talk about that later. Any type of self-regulation in any organ of the body, and you're going to see that too. Cancer in children, dissonant energy, protection needed, like the godparents. You could say that the thymus is the godparent of the child's heart. You could say that. In fact, in the cases of, you know, aberrant cell growth, malignant cancer, that word, and that came out of a book that I have on my shelf, Heal Thyself. That word in ancient times, malignant, meant to rebel toward rebelliousness towards God. It doesn't mean that you hate God. It means that you need to return to that connection. Return to that eternal connection with whatever you consider to be the infinite, God, whatever. And the thymus plays a huge part. It is the gateway into the soul. Remember what they said back in the time of Greeks. Inability to receive goodness from others and care for oneself. Let me tell you, this is the emotion that causes cancer. People that tend to get cancer take care of everyone but themselves. You think of the people you've had, just how they are in life. There it is. So they need that thymic extract. That will help them emotionally, mentally, physically, to turn to, hey, maybe I should take a break and restore myself. Yes. These substances have an intelligence that work far beyond the physical that we're looking at. The person that's the rescuer, they want to carry the world and make it all right. This is why people don't sleep. I can't sleep. I'm just thinking about all this stuff all the time. Yes, they need thymus extract. Resentment builds up in the DNA, and I'll show you actual information along here if I get to it. It affects the DNA of their body, the literal the literal development of the cells. The genetic pool is determined a lot by whether the thymus is healthy or not. So some of the action steps that I created along with this is never lose your innocence. Sing, play, enjoy, you know, whatever that means. You know, when I go see my grandchildren or my daughters, you know, we laugh a lot. We play cards, we play other games. You know, we sing. You know, that youthful spirit, that innocence, that the thymus represents. This is why the thymus is so huge in children, because they are open. But they need to be protected. Here it is. And they need to learn that wonderful feng shui of relationship. This person, yes, I appreciate them. They're good, they're fine, but they need to be way out there in my field. Other people need to be right next to me. Yeah. Create, you know, and consider boundaries. And of course, to be happy. So now we can look at, now I redid this chart with Ellen and especially Lynn's help here, because, you know, some of the product names have changed. It's zinc chelate now. And we changed a couple of things. So whenever you look at a gland, here's the thymus gland, what is the vitamin for, as I read in the very beginning, Dr. Lee, what's the vitamin for the thymus? It's A. Now, it's also can be C, and the P factor within the C. So I love this product. Before Conjuplex was made, by the way, and most of you are familiar with Conjuplex, the doctors, when I first began, there was no, in 1972, there was no Conjuplex. They used Thymex and ACP. That was and there was no Immuplex either, but Immuplex came along in the 80s, I think. So, and the minerals, there's two for the immune system directly related to the thymus is calcium, which we're going to touch on these just briefly, and copper. The protomorphogen, thymus, and of course the herb, primary herb for the thymus and immune system is echinacea. And here's the action step. If you're not all laughing every day, please do it. You need to laugh. That opens the thymus. That clears the anger. That clears the frustration. That clears the challenges. You must laugh. So the excerpts that I'm going to go through are, this is my favorite book, and thank you, Lynn, for finding this and putting this in. This will be the best $38 you ever spent. I live by this book because this is Dr. Lee's information. Now he's talking about, I geared my whole book, all the protocols and even the priority of products based on this book right here. Kidney problems. Again, kidney problems, skin disorders, eye, you know, inflammation in the blood and lymph, liver disease. Now, why? Why is vitamin A so important? Why does it relate to the thymus? Because the thymus is the protector. It's the awakener, and it's the protector of the immune system. It's the stimulator, it's the brain, the means by which the immune system lives and thrives and is actively intelligent throughout the body. Also, vitamin A is. Look, the integrity of epithelial cells, this is Dr. Lee, is largely under the influence of vitamin A. And the disorders mentioned here relate to epithelial structures. Vitamin A, as I say, it's the flaming sword. It keeps pathogens, it prevents pathogens in the mucous membranes from getting in to the cellular network of any organ, gland, or tissue. We may recall that not only the skin and vascular network, look at the blood vessels, vitamin A and blood vessels, yes, are composed of epithelial tissues. That's why. But also that epithelium consists of the functional as well as the structural elements of many endocrine glands, as well as the kidney and liver. Blocking of the lumen, such as a tear duct, could cause conceivably be due to the loss of epithelial integrity in that channel. You get people with styes in their eyes. You get people with blocked arteries and veins in the smaller blood vessels. Vitamin A has to be in there somewhere. Also, we must consider the loss of epithelial integrity may lead to infection due to localized inflammation. Oh, vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin, and this is why vitamin A from chlorophyll is really the best vitamin A in the world, best source. Cod liver oil, too. It's fat-soluble. It's not water-soluble. You buy a synthetic A from another company or in the grocery store or the health food store, it's not real vitamin A. Those are water-soluble, synthetic vitamins made in a laboratory. The mechanical avenue for entrance of a microorganism, here it is, thus made possible, may account for the reported benefits of vitamin A in relationship to general resistance. Yes, the flaming sword. It protects pathogens from getting in. And here, of course, is vitamin C, infection. Remember, as I've talked to you before, ascorbic acid is not vitamin C. It's naturally a small amount occurring in food substances because it is the antioxidant. It's the protector. Now, synthetic vitamin C is not. It's nothing. It's a chemical. It's a pure crystalline poison. And it will not cure scurvy. It will not protect the other vitamin C elements in your reserves in your body. It won't do that. They just did that to make cheap product, to make a lot of money, and they have made billions fooling the world. But real vitamin C, here it is. Here's your rutin, hesperetin, quercetin. Here are your here's your tyrosinase. Here is your organic copper. Here's the copper-bearing enzyme right there for your immune system. And then, as I say, the K factors and the A factors, all in chlorophyll pearls. J factors, which carry oxygen to the tissue, provide that healing, help to nourish, provide that. And your P factors, integrity of that lumen that we just talked about, in cooperation with vitamin A. So I'm not gonna read both of these, but I want to read you a little bit about copper. We spend a good amount of time on this blog discussing new uses for biocidal properties of copper. We look to the past civilizations that used copper to kill bacteria without knowing the mechanisms behind it. Well, I beg to differ. Whether we think they knew it or not, they knew it. Their awareness of things was far greater than what ours is now, and most of it's been washed out of our consciousness for decades, for hundreds of years now. Ancient Egyptians used copper in wounds. The ancient Greeks who used it in plumbing. Oh, we're so brilliant, right? We have pipes, you know, we used to have lead pipes, but now we use copper. Yeah, you know who used it before you? Be humble. Ancient Greeks. Yeah, it is humbling, isn't it? I was humbled when I read this. Wow. And the seafaring explorers who used it to store drinking water, so it never went bad. But there is actually a far, far more ancient use of copper to combat infection, our own innate immune system. Along with all living things, we have a complex immune system that helps our bodies seek out and destroy pathogens. There are actually two immune system branches, the innate and adaptive. The adaptive immune system is the acquired immunity we develop over our lifetimes. This is where I say the first year of a child's life, as far as immunity, is the most important. Keeping things like vaccines away. Children don't need any of that till they go to school. By then, their immune system is developed. And you have seen with the heart sound recorder, people that were born before 1940, they have better hearts than you and I, and better constitution overall, unless they get deep into the medical system with drugs. The system that releases antibodies that are specifically able to kill a pathogen. This is a mineral we're talking about. Wow. Vaccines build upon these adaptive mechanisms to protect us from some infections. I would question that. The innate immune system is not as specific as the adaptive. It is not target-specific pathogens, but it is the first line of defense against infection. And here's the thymus. Here's vitamin A, and here's the complement, the vitamin, mineral, and protein. This system involves barriers, both physical and chemical, such as the skin, mucosal lining, GI tract, respiratory tract. Within the first few hours of exposure to a pathogen, the innate immune system activates the inflammatory responses, allowing more blood to flow to the affected area. I wonder how the body knows how to do that. The thymus. It is the brain that regulates all of this. It sends in white blood cells. Again, the thymus activates. Remember, it seeds those T cells. Okay, here we go. To begin the process of destroying the bacteria and also and viruses and cancer and any other foreign tissue, any tumors, any fibrotic tissue. It also activates the adaptive immune system. So I'm not going to go on and read all of this because we're getting all on in time, but I want you to read this through. This is your homework. Learn about copper. Now you could say, well, we have to be careful of copper toxicity. Well, first of all, you know, it's unusual. Oh, let's see, what do I press now to get back? Because I don't want to screw this up. Just close this. Is that right, Monica?
Yes.
Okay. So I gave you two articles on the copper. What was I just saying? Let's see. Copper toxicity. If copper is most of the time, unless you're exposed to some kind of external copper for some way chemically, you know, in a factory or your job related, but copper and zinc and iron all balance each other. So if you have enough of the others, then you're fine. Well, guess what trace minerals B12 has? All three. Guess what Immuplex has? Oh, you know what? Trace minerals doesn't have the iron. Sorry. But Immuplex has all three. Immuplex is a great way. Oh, here are the products. Immuplex, trace minerals. Oh, it does have iron. Keysin, all of these help in that balance. I might not have all of these correct, but now I'm not going to go into calcium. We've talked about calcium, but it is the other related to the thymus. It is a very crucial mineral. How does it relate to COVID? and thank you, Mark Anderson, for finding these. During this COVID virus, you'll never see this in this country. They did studies with people with low ionizable calcium in their blood. 2 in China, these 2, I believe, and 1 in Italy, or 2 in Italy and 1 in China, I forgot which. And here's what they found. Oops, let me just go down a little bit. Previous studies have reported that calcium played a central role in viral infections and repetitive mechanisms of SARS, MERS, Ebola, in large groups of SARS patients in North America. Hypocalcemia was detected in 60% of the patients, low calcium levels, ionizable calcium, at hospitals admission, and in 70%, 2/3, during hospitalizations. Moreover, data from patients with Ebola infections in the United States and Europe hospitals reported a similar incidence of hypocalcemia. Serum calcium, here's another. Serum calcium was associated with clinical severity and prognosis of patients with COVID-19. There it is, everyone. Selenium, serum calcium as a biomarker. This is how they gauged to know how sick the people were, whether they had, and whether they were gonna, how well they were gonna recover. At least in these countries they did. I don't know if they check it here. Serum calcium as a biomarker of clinical severity and prognosis in patients with COVID disease, 2019, a restorative cross-section study. Here's another one. Low levels of total ionized calcium in blood of COVID-19 patients. And here it is. So during February and March, they did it. Italy, China. So here we get into, so we've done the vitamins, the mineral, and now the like protein. The protomorphogens. Dr. Lee's, one of his top 3 significant gifts to the world was the development of these. Debilitating diseases. Someone with myasthenia gravis, if the medical profession hasn't removed their thymus, that's what they do. Give them thymus, but you need to give them not stimulate with the Thymex, but give them the Thymus PMG. It's probably not a product you've used a lot. It is an Immuplex, but not a well-used product. Believe me, if you're having emotional issues, bedwetting in children, hyper disease, oh, what? They give Thymus for Graves' disease? They give Thymus for, for infections, leukopenia. Yes, they give Thymus extract. We have for 90 years for anyone with hyper organ or glandular function, anything. And again, as the doctor said earlier, they studied the size when they did autopsies during World War II. I'll let you read that through. But I want to also show you what Lee knew associated, which is in that book, my favorite book. He also said it related to children that were not thriving, underdeveloped children. Osteoporosis and thymus extract? Yes. You're going to see that thymus has a huge bearing on calcium assimilation. Probably didn't know it. It's okay. Any healing, especially of dermal tissue. So I'll let you read that all through and see those implications. Here's Thymex. Now remember, this Thymex is the cytosol. It's a different part of the cellular network. It helps with function. You could say stimulation, but I don't want you to think that it's going to overstimulate. It won't, but it will get it going. That's why I use so much of it during my cancer, because I had to awaken my immune system. I had to get those lymphocytes, getting rid of those cancer cells, skin conditions, psoriasis. So this is going to broaden greatly your awareness of how to use these particular products. Allergies, yes. Hyperglandular activity. There it is. Now, remember I said T cells, think of thymus, B cells, the partner in the immune cascade of action is you must have spleen with it. They work together. They have found B cells in the thymus tissue, and they have found T cells in the spleen tissue. And both of them, as far as especially skin issues. And I have cleared, I didn't, but the products I've guided people in using for hives, 100%. Canker sores, blisters, swollen lymph nodes in the neck. Look at all of this. And resistance. So, yeah, I'll let you read all of this through about the spleen, because I don't want to talk too much about the spleen today. We'll do that at another time. But I do want to read this because it's Dr. Lee. He from a lecture he gave to the American Medical Association in 1930. From the studies here discussed, it appears that the spleen is likewise concerned in calcium metabolism. Furthermore, it appears that the results might even be interpreted to mean that in the absence of the parathyroid glands, the spleen can take over. What a pearl. What a pearl. And you get people that have imbalances in their, and they have too much calcium in their blood. Well, that's because they don't have enough D, number one, and they're just doing their job. They're stimulating more calcium production, but you can also give them spleen. It is also the regulator of any mineral going into any tissue is the spleen. That's Chinese medicine. The spleen can take over their function in preventing tetany. Wow. Get that calcium into the tissue relaxes. These intricate relationships between organ systems illustrate the ends to which the organism as a whole will go in order to preserve the vital equilibrium. Furthermore, they indicate, in some measure, the inherent difficulties in outlying effective therapy. Now, I'm not going to read this through. I'm running out of time here. All of this through, I'm going to skim through this. You can read this through yourself. I probably should have made this a 2-hour lecture, but since we're here. So in the beginning, this is out of this book, Practical Endocrinology. And you can download this book. This is a 700-page book. There are more clinical pearls in this book than any other writings except for Dr. Lee's. These were the organotherapists, the endocrinologists that were studying how to use glandular substances all over the world, what they were finding, what they tried, what did work, what didn't work. No charge. Thanks, Saline River Press. Download it. I have 2 of them. I have one that I use to make copy of pages, like here, and I have one that I keep. It's a great book. It's a sacred book to me. Despite the facts, now remember, this was a long time ago when they started using thymus extracts and exploring it. Despite the facts that the thymus plays a decided part in early endocrine balance. Wait a minute. You mean it affects all the endocrine glands? Yes. Remember what I said when I began. The upper three, the balance between the upper three and the lower three. The communication. The dance between all of the endocrine glands. They knew this way back. Plays a decided part. Well, that's pretty, that's 100% in the early endocrine balance. And that potent extracts have been made from it, which are doubtless experimentally active and so therapeutic, some therapeutic value. As yet, virtually no leading endocrinologist will admit that this gland is an endocrine gland. So even though they knew how much it did, you couldn't convince these guys. They were so stubborn. But they were awakened. They were awakened by this man, Henry Harrower. And there were a few medical doctors in the early times. And of course, beloved Dr. Lee and Henry Harrower were great friends. The product Antronex, Dr. Harrower gave Lee, when he closed his clinic and stopped making and selling supplements, gave him the formulation to Antronex. That's how close they were. The thymus related to, this may be resurrected. However, in certain cases of here it is, hyperactivity of an organ, as we shall see later. It is these epithelial cells that hold the mystery of the adult thymus. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's inactive. It's no good after puberty. That's not what they thought. It's not what they thought. The thymus gland is an organ of vital importance and extirpation. That means taking the gland out or damaging it or irradiating it. At the height of its development, results finally in death. Probably its most important function consists of the inhibition of acids. Wait a minute, Joe. Are you kidding me? So I have these conversations with myself, as I do with all of you. You're telling me that this little pearl right here, this little sentence, person with hyperacidic function anywhere, stomach, gastrointestinal tract, pH, you mean if you give them thymus? Yeah, probably its most important function, that's what they thought at the time, consists of the inhibition of acids. And, or, as I say, either too much acid or not enough acid. Here is again that beautiful balance that the protomorphogens play and the extracts from those protomorphogens play. Too high brings it down, too low brings it up. If you read Harrower, you will see that these extracts that they were using, they did that. They used it. They experimented with it. They found truths about it. And the consequent removal of injurious substances from the blood. Oh, you mean this extract from the thymus cleans the blood? That's what they're saying, unless I'm reading it wrong. The function of the supposed active principles gives an explanation of the disturbances occurring in the calcium metabolism after that organ has been removed, as well as the changes in bone and the central nervous system. So damage to the thymus, removal of the thymus, not feeding the thymus throughout life, central nervous system issues, musculoskeletal issues, digestive issues. Look what this one paragraph is telling us. These were medical people. They were finding this to be true. Complex relations exist between the thymus and the various organs of internal secretion. This is especially true of the spleen. These two are buddies. Taken together, very powerful. I use this with people that especially have these chronic coughs. They can never get over the cough. They're taking pneumotrophin. They're taking the herbs for their respiratory system. They're taking calcium, and it still doesn't get better. Add spleen. I could give you 3 doctors right now that you could call and say, geez, I had that chronic cough all the time. People that cough all the time. I added spleen PMG in, went away in a few hours, 72 hours at the most. For it is believed that this organ is prepared by the thymus to take up some of the still unexplained functions of the thymus after its involution. Even if your thymus is damaged, I don't know about they're indicating removal. If you take spleen, it'll make up for it. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to go into this. This tells you more about, they did some experiments with dogs and their, because I'm out of time now and I want to finish up here, that they removed the thymus of dogs. What happened? Eventually the dogs died. Now, our dear friend, Tom Cameron, I spoke with him this morning. This was a case that he talked about. You can read it through. He used Thymus extract. And this is Molly. You can see that she's not as well. She had cancer and she pretty much fully recovered, he said. I don't know how much longer she lived, but she did recover. So you can look at this where they talked about the ability of the thymus to help and the indications if the thymus was out of balance, if it was too large, what it caused, if it was underactive, what it did. So I'll let you read this, but I want to read you this one thing. Besides this, the enlarged thymus itself causes pressure on the vagus nerve. What? Yeah. People, again, with hyperactive, too much acids. Maybe it is their thymus is either overactive or swollen, and the sympathetic plexus at the base of the heart, upsetting the autonomic control that enables cardiovascular mechanism to meet emergencies. Person that gets upset easily, and they, I have a hard time breathing when I get upset. Yeah, I start coughing. People that start coughing all the time. There it is. Thymus extract. Thymus PMG, that would be. I wanted to read this one thing. Other research, because before Dr. Lee made protomorphogens, guess what they knew? Guess what these organotherapists knew? They had an idea. It was Lee that perfected getting these nucleoproteins into tablet form. They knew nucleoproteins were part of the extract, but they didn't know at that time. It was Lee that figures out that it was the significant part of the organ extract. Other researchers show that by feeding these animals extracts containing thymin or preparing nucleoprotein thymus extracts and injecting that into these animals, they were injecting it into the blood. The defects may be prevented or mitigated depending upon the extent of the upset. Wow. Talks more about spleen here, relationship of the other endocrines. Remember I said the upper ones, the pituitary, right? The thyroid. You can read this through. You could see what they were finding. The other pearl that I wanted to show you, remember I talked about thymus, spleen for the skin. In 1926, this is how far back, a total thymus extract was prepared by F.F. Ward of New York City, who was seeking a means of controlling psoriasis. He reported success. Here again, why? because psoriasis has nothing to do with the skin. That's the end result of poisons in the blood, fungal overgrowth in the blood. It's coming out through the skin. And what did we say? Thymus extract is helps with blood purifier, lymphatic drainage. That's where all that stuff would drain into. So I could go on. I could spend a whole day with you looking at the excerpts just from this one chapter. I wanted to show you, this carcinosin was a product, one of the extracts that they were looking at. With the idea of internal secretion of the true thymus is locked up in the giant epithelial cells, and on the supposition of this thymic internal secretion preserves normal epithelial health throughout the entire body. You mean if I use thymus on all these people with rashes, if they take the flu vaccine and they get a rash, yeah, this is what you need to give them. People call me all the time. Well, calcium and F, yes, but you've got to give them thymus. This is what they found 100 years ago. Hansen extract, known as this, because it appears to exert a lytic effect in certain malignant tumors. And you'll see that they, when you finish all of these references that I've given you here, how much they used these extracts for cancer cells, especially epithelial types of cancer. A very definite and selective action in the epithelial types of cancer. Carcinoma. I had a call today. I was on another call. Doctor's mother has a carcinoma. We talked about it. And then, of course, the sudden death in infants, which they never concluded one way or the other, whether that is the cause of sudden death in children. They said it was a hoax. Then they said, well, it does relate. You can decide. Now, obviously, you can't. If a baby's on mother's milk, you can't give them thymus extract, but the mother can take it, and the mother should be on Imuplex all the way through. So, and then the wonderful, this article that Dr. Lee wrote, of course, in his monthly Applied Trophology, his newsletter that he wrote, he considered the thymus to be the key, as I've said, to the entire immune system. Recently disclosed in the knowledge of the importance of all white blood cells in the immunological process and their constant production by the thymus gland, it sends them forth to mature, alerts them to multiply when necessary, and provides the clue that the thymus is the key organ in the mammalian intricate defense mechanism. Here it is. This article is beautiful. And Lynn, Lynn, I believe, put it in the chat box, this whole article, and the other one too. I didn't put it all in. So if you can't extract it from the chat box, just send me an email. I'll send them over to you. And here is MD Anderson, what I said in the very beginning, that they know how much these thymus extracts work. They're experimenting with it. They call it the idea of homeopathic glandular therapy was first introduced almost 200 years ago. Yes, that's true. But they don't use them, everyone. That's the sad. What are they experimenting with? Clinical trials in humans suggest promising results in terms of allergies, asthma, cancer, chemotherapeutic side effects. Remember I said, especially in children, cardiomyopathy, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, HIV, AIDS, immunostimulation, liver disease, respiratory. Do I have to keep reading? Lupus, tuberculosis. They know that these work. Future areas of research, they're so, whoever's doing this, God bless them, they're so excited. Then they're saying, wow, I wonder if it's going to work with rheumatoid arthritis, warts, urinary tract infections, psoriasis, eczema, hair loss, appendicitis. Yes, it is going to work. It's going to help. Is it the cure-all? Of course not. So you can look at this. You can go on to FD Anderson's website and read about it if you're curious. And of course, at the last page, the last word in my book, and Saline River Press helped me with this. Mark and Stephanie definitely suggested I put this in. The man who told us about the future of our health on this planet was Dr. McGarrison, who was knighted in England for his groundbreaking research while serving as a British medical surgeon in India during the first 2 decades of the 20th century. And you know what he said? Here it is. The first system in the body to succumb to the effects of malnutrition carefully demonstrated the lesions in the endocrine glands caused by specific adulterated foods. And he said, of course, all of the endocrine glands he names in this article. So you can get this. So I went an hour and a half, which I always say I'm going to go an hour, but you know I like to talk, add things in. So I trust you enjoyed this, and I will take some questions if some of you have some questions. You will see, just to finish here, that I use Thymex throughout my book, but I use Thymus PMG throughout my book. So if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and come in and ask your question. Or if Monica wants to read me the questions from the chat box.
Hi, Joseph. This is Hasso.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
I can hear you fine.
I just have a quick question. I have a client who has lost her spleen in a car accident. Do you think it would be useful for her to do spleen PMG on and off or all the time, or what do you think would be a good approach?
No, because once the organ is gone, using a glandular for it will not help it. But it's a very good question, because just what I outlined today, who is the partner to the spleen? So when the spleen has been removed, you know, it takes 5 to 10 years off your life, unfortunately. It's pretty sad. So you don't want anybody removing your spleen. Now, obviously, this woman had an accident. Okay. You know, the spleen has a lot of blood. You would bleed to death if they didn't remove it. But who is the partner? Right, Dr. Hasso? Give her, and the responsibility then for a lot of mechanisms of immunity and clearing the blood and lymphatic falls on the liver. So you can take the load off the liver by two areas specifically. Who's the partner to the spleen? Thymus. Now, you may want to, if you don't want to give her both individually Thymus PMG and spleen PMG, Thymex and spleen, Thymex and Thymus PMG, you could rotate those, give her a bottle one, a bottle the other, or just give her Imuplex. The other that takes the load off the liver, obviously, is to give her kidney support. So Renafut would be my choice because it has the protomorphin and the Arginex in there. All right. So, but to give, once the organ has been removed, there's no sense in giving the protomorphin because it's not going to make up for that. It's that opportunity is lost forever, unfortunately. But you can see that the surrounding organs that we talk about and include in how we give people nutrition and serve them that way, you can see that that will help. But there's a tremendous load on the liver now for the rest of her life, unfortunately. So, okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, then I have a question. Could you give, if you can't give PMG, can you just give the desiccated to her?
Well, can anybody hear her, Monica or Lynn? I couldn't understand.
I cannot.
Okay. Why don't you type it in the chat box and I'll try to answer.
Chat is disabled, but I can enable it.
I think the question was giving desiccated spleen if somebody doesn't have a spleen.
Yeah, I don't use desiccated spleen. That was an AK product that they talked standard process into making. Listen, it's spleen extract, but it's just desiccated spleen. It's not going to have, remember, what were they looking at with a lot of these combinations that they were making is they were looking at extracts from the cellular network, the nuclear protein. There's very little nuclear protein. There's very little protomorphogen in spleen desiccated. No, use the spleen PMG. Yeah, they were using that for something else with AK, which I don't even remember. But I have never, maybe you found it applicable. I've never used the product, so.
When do you recommend desiccated glandulars anyway?
I don't. I only recommend cytosol and protomorphogens. It's
Okay.
you know, and I know many of you like the desiccated adrenal. It works well, but again, it is going to be a stimulant, which is fine. That's why some practitioners say, even though a lot of you don't, they say to only use the desiccated products for a few weeks because you don't want to take that chance and overstimulate it. Now, some of you have said that that hypothesis is not true, so that's fine. You know, that's why we work as a network. But the key is getting the essence of these, the concentrate of the nuclear protein and the cytosol extract for cytosol for function, protomorphogen for self-regulation. Yes, the desiccated spleen or adrenal will have a little protomorphogen in there, but not clinically effective. Not nearly. You'd have to take a lot. So.
Thank you.
Joseph,
Yes.
would you recommend, being that COVID is like all over the place, as we all know, that you just put people on the Thymus PMG, even if it's on a week, off a week, you know, because it's so strong in building the basic core of the body, building up the antibodies is what it does.
Yeah, I definitely. It actually, you know, in one of the things that when I skimmed through, because our time went on,
Yes.
the thymus gland actually triggers the body to make antibodies. That's what it does. It tells the body, okay, there's an antigen here, and you need to make an antibody to this virus, to this bacteria, to this cancer cell, to this fibrotic cell, to this tumor, or whatever the makeup is. Yes, I absolutely agree. Now, you know, in our protocols, we have Immuplex that has Thymus PMG in it, but whether there's enough in there, and I think this goes with your question, is I don't think that there is.
I don't either, Joseph.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
either. It didn't help me, and
That's
I
why,
find Thymus
right.
PMG much better,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
much better.
You'll be amazed. And any hyper organ, really the hyper organs, the Thymus PMG is tremendous. You know, as I say, it's my number. If you look at my bedwetting in children, it's in there. It may be the #1 product unless somebody changed it, but I had it as originally as the #1 product because their hyper nervous system, children at night when they go into deep REM sleep, their nervous system collapses. They don't have that regulation to hold even the bladder, the nerves to the bladder. Can't do it. So because they're so, there's such an intensity in their bodies and it may be in their lives as children. So Thymus PMG, it's a very underused product, but I tell you, everyone, I would have a bottle on hand for sure. And spleen PMG. Remember coughs. Just remember that. You know how many calls I get on, I can't get rid of this cough in this client. I can't get rid of this cough in my body. Yeah, there you have it. So, well, thank you all very much. Unless there's one more.
I have
Yep.
2 questions in the chat. Do you want to take them?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, the first one is, I'm getting up there. Would
It's okay.
Thymus PMG help a client with CLL lymphoma? He is taking the Immuplex.
Yes. Yep. Yep. You'll see in my journey through cancer, I took a lot of Thymex, but I had 6 or 9 Thymus PMG a day. Yes. Yep.
And then the second question is, can low Thymus PMG help low lymphocytes? Low CD4.
Yes. Self-regulation. Just whenever you think of the protomorphogen, too high, too low, it will regulate. That is the whole premise of why Lee made them. You remove the burden. The protomorphogens remove the burden on that organ, gland, or tissue to function normally. It has lost its way. It doesn't understand. The protomorphogen is what helps that particular gland to gain the understanding. Just physiologically, it does. Yep. Well, great.
One more.
Okay.
What problems do you see in an adult who has had bedwetting as a child?
Well, normally bedwetting in children will resolve as their nervous system matures or regulates. That is a pre-pubescent issue usually. And once the hormones develop, that again, that informational network related to the nervous system goes away. It doesn't, I've never seen any correlation, I haven't, with bedwetting in children and then issues down the road. Bladder leakage and, and issues with urination. In men, it's usually prostate. In women, it's swollen prostate. In women, it's usually a tipped uterus on the bladder, but not related to that childhood. That usually does resolve itself permanently, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
Can I just jump in on that for a second?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So in GAPS, we see a lot of, sometimes there's bedwetting because there's just too much die off, no matter what the age is.
That's
So
right.
that
That's
can
right.
happen.
Yep. It's true. It's true. It definitely is, remember what the terrain in the intestinal tract, in the colon, down in that area, whatever the terrain is there is also in the bladder. Definitely. Those pathogens and substances, they migrate where they should not go. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, what I've seen, I haven't seen, hundreds, but I've seen enough. What stays is a hyperactive bladder. In other words, they have a tendency to, let's say if they drink a glass of water, they urinate a glass and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, you're right. And that would be Thymus PMG, any hyperactive. Yep. Any hyperactivity, it will affect the bladder. Yeah. It will calm that down over time. And now Thymus PMG, you just can't give 1 or 2 a day. You're going to have to get up there 3 twice a day is really a good clinical dose. Usually you don't have to go beyond that, but sometimes you can go to 9 a day. So I take right now, I take a lot of things for my immune system, but I'm taking 6 thymus and 6 spleen PMG. In the morning when I go to my computer here, and then at the end of the day too. So, well, thank you all for very much, and it was so.
Joseph,
Yes.
can you hear me now? I
Yes.
have something to contribute. There is actually something called the Thymus Tab, which is very easy. You can just lightly tap over the thymus, which is in the middle of the chest,
Right.
like below, and it really strengthens the immune system. It also makes you feel better emotionally immediately. And yeah, the
Thank
Thymus
you
Tab.
so much. Yes, I was
And you
going to
do it-
mention that. Yes, that my father taught me early on. He said, Joe, when you're upset, tap your thymus. He taught me. I think it
Yes.
was 10 times. I think it
No,
was 10.
in the waltz beat, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
like
well,
that.
there's probably different, yes, and definitely. And my father said, and when you need more energy, when you need the heart energy, you know, and he said, remember, what did Tarzan pound? He didn't pound his stomach. He pounded his chest, and he was stimulating his thymus and his heart. That's right. And that's when I started today, that Achilles realized this, that it could either stimulate the breath, the smoke from the, or bring the fire, or it could calm it. That's right. Thank you for mentioning that. I had a note to put that in there and I didn't. So you were acting as you were reading in our collective mind. So that's a great way to end today. And I appreciate you all. And I will be with you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Joseph.
You're welcome. Next week,
Thank you, Joseph.
you're welcome. Next week, we're going to look at on this call, and of course, the people in Colorado Springs, all you wonderful people there, hugs to you all. And I'm so fond of all of you, and Lynn down there. I will be doing type 1 and type 2 diabetes next week, next Thursday. You're all welcome to be on.
Cool.
Yep, yep. So blessings to you all. Be safe.